Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And one of my subscribers sent me a link of an interview done with Gregg Valentino that I thought I would share with you guys. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And yeah, it was interesting. I don't necessarily consider Gregg to be a really smart guy, and I'm not a bodybuilding fan. So let's make that clear too. A lot of people always say, Jason, why do you feel the need to tell us all the time you're not a bodybuilder or a bodybuilding fan? Because I literally every single day have multiple people accuse me of being a terrible bodybuilder, or they'll be like, why are you talking about bodybuilding? You don't even look like a bodybuilder. Because people don't seem to understand, no matter how many times I say it, that I really and truly despise bodybuilding. Like, I actually hate the bodybuilding culture, and I'm not part of it. I'm a critic of it. That's like, going over to some really famous Christian minister and listening to him talk about Satanism. This is the equivalent of what you would be doing. If you're a massive bodybuilding fan and you're coming here, you're probably the equivalent of a fan of Satanism going and listening to some Christian minister. I am anti-bodybuilding. I think it's actually evil and it's repugnant as a subculture. Right? I despise it. I think it's a degenerate lifestyle. And I think a lot of what Gregg talks about here falls into that. So we need to make that very clear. I did find this stuff interesting about site enhancement. That's something I've told people in the past. I've had a lot of people say, oh, well, Valentino obviously used tons of synthol. And I'm like, no, I actually believe his other end of the story. I've been around this stuff enough years in my life that when the guy says that he was injecting 30 or 40 milliliters or more every week of anabolics and he just had to site shoot all of it, that would actually do that. And people need to understand there's not really a difference. As far as people who are just doing that sort of site enhancement, it's not really going to be significantly different than synthol. It's more or less the same thing. Right? Synthol has become slang term for putting oil into a muscle. Well, all those substances are in carrier oils anyways. They produce a very, very, very similar effect. You're not really, in other words, you can't tell synthol apart from massive dose site injections of anabolics. You are not going to be able to tell them apart looking at them. Because they're not going to look different. So, when you have a guy like Gregg who says that, why wouldn't we believe him? I really don't know why you would want to argue about it, right? Why would you argue that someone putting oil into a body part versus saying, hey, no, I put oil and drugs together into a body part to get the same result? Why would anyone think that they would be lying about doing something that by most people's standards would be objectively worse? So it's kind of a ridiculous argument people make. But yeah, that's site enhancement. And if you do enough site enhancement, yeah, that's the effect you're going to get. And it's believable. I think it's believable. So, and he also pointed out, a lot of what you're seeing is collagen injections out there. That a lot of people are doing this, being mistaken for synthol. A lot of that is collagen. A lot of it is PMMA, which is collagen. And then others are saying it's silicone injections, and you see a lot of that, and that's extremely dangerous. But what I thought was really interesting, and the point I wanted to come to with the video he did, is that he talked a lot about how unhealthy serious bodybuilding is. And he more or less said, in his experience watching guys, that a lot of these 300-pound bodybuilders are more unhealthy than fat people. In other words, there are fat people who are in better shape than they are. There are fat people who are going to outlive them. When you're 300 pounds of muscle, that's actually most likely harder on your heart in certain ways than being 300 pounds of fat. I don't necessarily agree with that point because there is a cardiac benefit to the muscle in the sense of it can actually help move blood flow through its own blood vessels. And there's also insulin sensitivity benefits. But the problem is that when guys are getting that big, they don't even have good insulin sensitivity anymore because of the other drugs they're using. So they're losing the health benefits of the muscle mass, because we know it affects diabetes, cancer, everything else. And he did point out there are tons of fat people who do live much longer than these bodybuilders are living, and they're dropping like flies. And he's right. And he also pointed out the conditioning standpoint, and that's something that I hate in the bodybuilding world. They don't use the word conditioning correctly. And because so many people who follow fitness now follow bodybuilding, they misuse the word conditioning. The guy who can run and has cardio who's fat has conditioning. Right? If someone can do high intensity cardio while keeping their heart rate and breathing within a manageable range, that's conditioning. That's actually what we think of as conditioning. And the weird that the bodybuilding world considers conditioning to be what? How lean you are. And the reason that got started was because many years ago, people did figure out doing a lot of conditioning work can help you lose body fat. So they equated it with conditioning. And in certain sports, they equated dropping weight that way with your conditioning. You do so much conditioning work that you lose body fat and lose body weight. And that kind of carried into the bodybuilding world, but to the point to where they no longer have the same meaning. And he's right. Bodybuilders are out of shape. They're out of shape. And these guys are dying young, and they aren't healthy. And people need to understand that. And those of us who are talking about fitness and health and these things, we do need to flatly reject the entire bodybuilding world, right? It has had an enormous negative influence on people's physical health, their emotional health, everything else. Because the bodybuilding world and even the men's physique world, everything else has created a standard for men based purely upon an aesthetic that isn't even maintainable year round. The guys who are winning don't even look like that year round. But it creates a standard that creates eating disorders, causes all sorts of self-esteem issues. It's destructive to young men who follow it. It really is a destructive thing. And they can spin it any other way they want. Well, it gets me in the gym. Well, but is it getting you into the gym and forcing you into an anorexic lifestyle? Is it getting you into the gym and forcing you to a point to where you no longer feel good enough if you don't go on trend? Because everyone who you see who has the look you want is on trend? So while I'm all for anything that promotes people getting in the gym, anything that promotes people working out, there's a threshold to where it promotes other negative health consequences that may ultimately kill you young, that will destroy your sense of self-worth. And, and he talked about that guys put so much effort into certain things that they think they need that they neglect things like their bills. And I mean, that's a valid point. He called them that. He's called them the momos who do that. He sees that there are guys who will literally neglect their bills, neglect their children, everything else to get something expensive they need for their bodybuilding lifestyle, for their appearance, whether it's to get their gyno removed or a surgery to make a muscle look better that's been injured. That happens, and that's a sad state of affairs when you are placing that much value on your physical appearance that you are neglecting important things in life. That's a mental illness at that point. At that point, you have a major body image disorder. And I think that's a big downside to all of this. It promotes that, and that's not health. That's not fitness. It really isn't, guys. It really isn't. And that's what it promotes. So we have the whole health end of the guys getting so massive and abusing large amounts of drugs and everything else in order to achieve a certain look being a problem. But there's a trickle-down effect because of the focus on appearance that much of the fitness world now has as a result of bodybuilding and the physique world being intermixed into it, that we have young men who are emotionally and mentally unhealthy, and that will carry over into your physical health. Because if you decide that you have to be 8% body fat year round, it's a perfect example. If you develop such a mental issue that you think you need to be 8% body fat year round, that will kill you as quickly as being fat will. That is just as bad for you as the person who needs to lose 30 or 40 pounds of body fat to be in the healthy range. You're going to suffer just as many health problems as they are. You're not healthy. You're not fit. And that's the problem, is that the mental will sometimes have the physical follow after it. And that's something that people need to take into account, that they need to think about. So I appreciate the fact that someone like Gregg, who's using a little bit of his outreach and his own fame and his bad experiences and his observations to point out to people, hey, this whole lifestyle is not healthy. This is unhealthy. Or as I put it, it's degenerate. The whole bodybuilding world, with all the things that go on in it, it is a degenerate lifestyle. And it is self-destructive. It is ultimately destructive to the individual. It isn't healthy. It isn't building anything positive. Right? And as he said, you should be an athlete, not a bodybuilder. He said that in that video. You guys check that out. He said, no, you should be an athlete. I agree. Absolutely agree. And I'm not saying you guys can't look good. I'm not saying you can't have some improved body composition. I'm not saying you can't have abs, because, plenty of athletes do. But the focus needs to be on your performance, your fitness, your health, and let the aesthetic follow after it, guys. This whole focus on the bodybuilding thing ultimately leads to poor mental health, poor physical health, and everything else. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.